Mom demands money after learning I work at a club. So for the last couple of years, I worked as a dancer at a well-known gentleman's club. It's quite high-end and security is very good. A customer only has to say something we don't like and they would get kicked out. It's actually a lot of fun, and on a good night, the tips are great, and I managed to save a decent amount of money. I didn't tell my mom where I was working because I knew exactly what her reaction would be. Unfortunately for me, about a year in, someone she knew had come to the club and spotted me there. Of course, it didn't take long to get back to her. She hit the roof, called me everything you could think of, including a prostitute, and then kicked me out. I stayed with a friend for about a week until I managed to secure an apartment and decided to get on with my life because I was making enough to support myself quite comfortably. I guess my mom found all this out from my sister, and she realized I was making decent money because out of nowhere, she calls me to demand money. No hello or how are you, just demands, because apparently I owe her for letting me live at home. So essentially, my mom thinks that she's entitled to my quote prostitute money. Our next Reddit post is from Cypher Strike. Okay, so basically I'm a 16-year-old boy and I took my 10-year-old brother out for the day. Everything was going well until we decided to go get some boba tea. Now my brother's autism is a bit severe and he tends to just randomly scream here and there. So while we were waiting in line, he did just that and he scared the kid in front of us who was with his mom. This made the kid in front of us drop his boba tea. I tried to apologize on my brother's behalf, explained his condition, and even offered to pay for another tea. The entitled mother, though, started lashing out and said some seriously messed up stuff like, "I don't want your money, you should use it for your brother's therapy," and "he deserves to be in a mental hospital." All because her kid, who was actually like 14 or 15, got scared and dropped his boba tea. I was about to leave with my brother in disgust when the other kid took a swing at my brother and hit him in the chest. I was not going to stand for that, so before he could take another swing, I grabbed him and slammed him into one of the tables. Then the mom started screaming louder than a World War II siren and told people that I just assaulted her son, who apparently had anger issues. When I saw her calling the cops, I just laughed and went to check on my brother, who was crying and yelling in pain. I wasn't worried because the place had cameras and witnesses who clearly saw how demented they were. Fast forward a month, and she's now facing a $2,000 fine, and her son was put back on probation. For that kid's safety, I hope I never see him again. Our next Reddit post is from Dogloverin. When my kids were preschoolers, we spent every summer morning at the pool. I had a bag full of toys that I took with us so they could keep themselves amused. In July, another mom and her preschooler started coming to the pool. My kids were cool with sharing their toys since that kid didn't have any with him. Until, after about 2 weeks, he started demanding my kids special toys that they were playing with. The entitled mom looks up from her book and starts berating my children for being mean and not sharing. She tells them to give their toys to her son, so I reached over and took her book. When she asked me what on earth I was doing and told me to give it back to her, I responded with her own words, "Why are you being so mean? You should share." She lost her mind. I just kept responding that what's good for adults is good for kids. So if she believes that my kids aren't entitled to their private use of their own property and are mandated to share with others, then she believes the same goes for her. She couldn't have it both ways. I asked her to choose a way that she wanted to live, so she packed up in a huff, and we never saw her again. Our next Reddit post is from Holden Position. I'm a 20-year-old guy, and this happened when I was 14. I have a brother that's about 6 years younger than me. He's been overly coddled by my parents for having been diagnosed with high-functioning autism when he was 4, but other than that, he seems very normal, just unbelievably spoiled. And by a lot, I mean nearly all the time. Anything I had, he also had to have, so that meant that we had doubles of almost everything that wasn't shared items. Anything he had that I didn't, he would rub it in my face any way that he could. When I was 11, I begged my parents for a 3 deciseconds for my 12th birthday. I got one, but then I was told to lend it to my brother whenever he wanted it, or else I would have it taken away, which it was, a lot. When my aunt found out, after seeing my parents forcibly take my 3 deciseconds out of my hands to give to my brother on one of her visits, she let loose on them for such blatant favoritism. They returned my 3 deciseconds immediately and then blamed me for the situation after my aunt left. But still, they didn't make me give it to my brother again. Instead, my parents went out a few days later and bought another 3 deciseconds as a surprise gift for my brother. On several of mine and other people's birthdays, my brother made a huge fuss because the party wasn't all about him. Even going so far as to outright state that he was upset because he wasn't getting any gifts or getting to blow out candles on the cake. My parents learned the hard way that they couldn't enable my brother the way they wanted to at those parties, and they were actually kicked out of a few parties for trying. Because of that, other kids at his school stopped inviting him to birthday parties altogether. For me, my birthdays were some of the only days that were all about me because, otherwise, my parents forced my life to revolve around my little brother. The year before this story took place, my parents ended up paying more attention to him the entire time on my 13th birthday. And they even asked me if I would let my brother blow out my birthday cake candles because he was upset and pouting. I refused because I wanted to blow out my own candles. They called me a spoiled brat at first, until my aunt intervened and chastised them for their favoritism yet again. She pointed out that she had noticed how my brother gets nearly everything between the two of us just because he's autistic. My parents got no support from anyone else there, other than my brother, who was still crying because they wouldn't let him blow out my candles. Then, because he didn't get his way, he tried to outright spit on my cake out of spite. Thankfully, my awesome aunt blocked him before he got the chance. Then she scolded him until he ran to my mom in tears. My parents took a lot of heat from the other adults there and then promised to never ask me to let my brother blow out my candles again. They pretty much just went through the motions for the rest of the party. My aunt took over coordinating everything from that point. The following year, a couple of weeks before my birthday, my parents sat me down and told me they were still going to get me some gifts and a small cake. But my birthday party was effectively canceled to avoid my brother having another meltdown. I told them I couldn't believe they were doing this to me, and they just seemed to shrug it off without a care. So, at school over the next week, I told my teachers, and even my school counselor. All of them were appalled by my parents' lack of consideration or empathy. The vice principal even found out and consoled me. Eventually, all of this got back to my parents through social media. My parents ended up grounding and gaslighting me for telling so many people, but that didn't stop me from still telling everyone at school that I was grounded for just being upset my birthday was canceled for no good reason. I guess that made the situation worse because several of my friends' parents called my parents or messaged them on Facebook to say, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And suddenly, I was ungrounded. But I still didn't get an apology. My dad just walked into my room with his arms crossed, told me my grounding was over early and walked out. That was it. I thought my party was still canceled because nobody said anything about it. My brother thought it was hilarious and rubbed it in my face that I wasn't going to get to celebrate. But at the end of the 2 weeks, my parents held a surprise party for me at my favorite restaurant. Then they started claiming that was their intent all along, but I knew that it wasn't. From what I saw at the party, everyone was incredibly unhappy with them for what they did. Clearly, they ended up doing the surprise party to try to save what little of their reputation they had left. I'm pretty sure they had to pay through the nose to accommodate me on my birthday. I got dinner with all my friends at my favorite restaurant that had a small arcade. I even got a PlayStation 4. I could tell that everything had been bought and planned last minute because my dad had a look about him that my aunt comically described as looking like a moth had flown out of his wallet. My brother, of course, made a huge fuss that I got a surprise party. But with so many of my friends and their parents there, my mom and dad finally had to put their feet down on my brother and stop his tantrum when he wanted to push my cake off the table. My brother ended up getting a timeout for the first time since he was a toddler, and my mom had to stay with him to make sure he didn't do anything crazy. And he did try a couple of times to run to the cake or the stack of presents. Who knows what he would have done if not for the fact that at least one adult was with him at all times. Even my dad stood guard to keep him away. My mom ended up having to remove my brother and herself from the party entirely and took my little brother to a nearby McDonald's so he could have fun in their play area. I later learned that she tried for an hour to get him to come out of the play structure, but he only did because he had to go to the bathroom, and afterwards he tried to run right back inside. My parents never tried to cancel my birthday again while I still lived with them, though they never tried as hard or spent as much on me again for the remaining 4 years that I was under their roof. My birthday parties consisted of a local pizza parlor, a cake without even my name written on it, and never again anything as expensive as a new gaming system. I don't mean to sound spoiled, but I was a bit disappointed that I never got a cake with my name on it again. My aunt called my parents out on that each year, and each year they claimed they forgot to get the cake decorated. I'm pretty sure the reason my name was never written on another cake was because my brother always refused to eat pieces of cake that had writing on someone else's name on it at any party. During each of my remaining birthday parties while still living at home, my brother made a fuss, and my mom took him somewhere else to calm him down. I was still required to share my PS4 with my brother, but it was mine, and I took it with me when I moved out at 18. Little bro did not like that and had a huge fit until my parents went out and bought another PS4 for him. When I moved out, they finally had to deal with their spoiled child because I wasn't there to help them with him anymore. On his recent 14th birthday, he went mental on our parents for not getting him a PS5. He's now currently grounded for I don't know how long, after causing hundreds or maybe even thousands of dollars in collateral damage during his rampage. He picked up a chair and just started destroying things with it. My parents just looked mentally checked out when I saw them last. My aunt also told me that they confided in her that they wish they could send my brother to military or boarding school in the future because they can't handle the monster they created anymore. But there is no way they can afford that. I'd be lying if I said I didn't find it ironically funny. OP, your parents sound like the type of people who care more about random people's opinions of them than about the happiness of their own child. OP, in my opinion, do yourself a favor and go no contact with your parents. Even though this is an r entitled kids post, it came from r Ameth the butthole. Am I the butthole for abandoning my dad because he got me a sucky car after he promised to get me a better one? Okay, so I'm a 20-year-old female, and my dad is 43. He's always said, your word is your bond, and keeping your word is the most important part of being a good and reliable person, and tons of never break your promises analogies. He's always taught me and my siblings that if someone can't trust your word, then you're basically a deadbeat loser. That's what I took away from all those lectures for all those years. So anyway, when my dad was 15, he promised me that he would buy me a car for my 18th birthday. I was, of course, ecstatic and gave him a list of cars that I'd be interested in. As the years went on, my taste changed a lot, so I would update the list of acceptable cars every year or when I found a new car that I liked. Then the year of my 18th birthday, he told me that he had taken a huge pay cut at work so he could take better care of my stepmom. She had cancer, but she's fine now. It's not like she had to do chemo or anything, just surgery and a lot of frequent doctor appointments. I was very understanding and accepted that it would take him a little longer to save up for my car. So finally, my 20th birthday was this past weekend. I was shocked and extremely hurt to find that the car he had bought me was an ugly Honda CR-V from 2008 or something. I tried not to get upset, I really did. But when he handed me the keys, I started crying and couldn't control myself. I yelled and asked him why he would buy me this car when I specifically updated the list of cars that I'd want at least once a year for 5 effing years straight. And I even let him go back on his word for 2 extra years so he could save more money for the car that I actually want. My stepmom started to scream at me, and I don't accept her raising her voice at me at all, so I drove off in my sucky piece of garbage Honda. Here's where I might be the butthole. I haven't spoken to my dad since, and I don't plan to until he fixes this. But even my mom, who's almost always on my side, is saying that I'm the butthole for abandoning my father. I've sworn to cut him out of my life for this because he broke his word to me, and it's always been unforgivable. To him, when someone breaks their word. Am I the butthole for expecting my dad to keep his own promises when that's his effing motto? Alright, so I may as well treat this like an r Ameth the butthole post. First off, OP, there's a world of difference between your dad saying that he'll buy you a car versus buying you a car that you specifically ask for. Maybe he can't afford the cars you asked for, or they're not up to his safety standards. Also, the reason why he had to put off buying you a car is because his wife got cancer. Like, so what if she didn't have to do chemo? Cancer is still cancer. On top of all this, you can't blame your dad for being a hypocrite when clearly he's doing his best to try to raise you appropriately. Yeah, he's telling you to keep your promises because, obviously, he doesn't want to raise a daughter who breaks her promises. And your father did fulfill his promise eventually. It was a bit delayed because of the cancer, but based on this story, I can't really begrudge this guy. So, OP, I'm giving you 3 out of 5 buttholes for overreacting here, and I'm giving your father 0 out of 5 buttholes.